Welcome back to another episode of the Water Matters podcast. I am pleased to be joined once again by Tim Smedley. Tim, how are you?
Hey Matt, I'm good. How are you?
Very, very well, thank you. Very well. Tim, as a reminder, if you've not listened to many of our previous episodes, Tim is the author of The Last Drop. I can almost reach it. I'm not going to bother reaching it because I'm going to knock the microphone over. But Tim's book, The Last Drop, is our recommended reading material for every Water Matters podcast. If you don't have one, then please let us know because we have plenty of copies here. We'd happily send you one. Or you can buy them wherever.
That sounds like you're trying to get rid of them, Matt.
No, never. So do read The Last Drop. Tim also provides for us, at least monthly, an article which is shared on the watermattters.life website. You can go to the website. You can find previous episodes of the podcast. There's hundreds of articles on there now, many of which Tim has written for us. And this episode, we are going to talk through one of Tim's most recent article that he's written for us, which is titled "The World's Wackiest Rainwater Capture Innovations." This came from, I'm going to let Tim tell the story, actually, of how this subject came about. But it's very interesting. And first of all, it's brilliant to see and talk about the various ways that people are finding or creating to capture rainwater to make the most of it. Obviously, we are huge fans of such ideas. The more people can become aware of rainwater harvesting and actually start doing it, the better. But Tim, let's start with you explaining how did this this topic come about and why are we having this conversation today?
Yeah, sure. So basically, I think we all thought maybe we'd had a few too many doom and gloom ones recently. So we were talking about water bankruptcy and UN reports. So we kind of were looking for something a little bit lighter. And someone in the Graph team found a kind of a viral image. I think they found it on Instagram of purportedly a rain harvesting bench in Singapore. It's kind of this picture of rain falling on a bench with a water capture cistern inside the bench, and there's lots of rainfall in Singapore. So a few of us responded to that email going, yeah, that looks great. Maybe we should kind of look into some similar innovations and see what else is out there. So that's where the idea for both the podcast and the article came from. And then the first thing I found when researching was that image was fake. It was an AI image. It kind of, it got about 3,000 likes on LinkedIn. And then I found another very similar one that was also supposedly from Singapore, which is of again public benches with moss cushions, and reading from the image it says self-watering air purifying pads that grow greener the more you sit on them. Now that one's more obviously immediately fake because you're going to be sitting on wet moss and there's no moss that likes being sat on. It's not going to grow greener the more you sit on it. It's going to die. Yeah. So you're going to end up with a wet bum and dead moss. But it's kind of interesting that you got these viral AI images of rainwater harvesting, and it got me thinking, well, I know there's lots of actual real ways of rainwater harvesting around the world that are really cool and we don't need to fake them. So that's why I put together this article of the real ones to counteract the fake images going around.
Yeah, but I think, like you say, it is interesting that people are spending time creating these fake AI versions of such things, presumably because, and then them being liked by thousands of people, presumably meaning, or can only sort of assume that means people are thinking this is a good idea. They are sort of probably looking at it very quickly and just assuming that it is real. Because they do look real. I mean, the backgrounds and all that sort of stuff, it does look like it could exist.
Yeah, it does look like it could exist. The first bench that tricked us all initially, actually, when you look at it a bit more clearly, the planting is where in front of the bench where you'd put your feet down.
Yeah.
So as soon as you see that, you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's probably
work.
Probably not real. But you're right. The good news behind it is that people are interested.
Yeah.
It's only going to go viral if people are vaguely interested in innovative rainwater capture. I also use this term biophilic, which is a term for design that incorporates nature within it.
Okay.
And so clearly it does catch the eye. Clearly people do find it intriguing and interesting and want to share it. It's just that unfortunately those two examples don't exist. So we've given them examples that do exist that they can share.
Yeah, and I suppose just to say, if you, like I said a moment ago, we'll if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm sure Luke or Jake, our video editors, will have thrown up the images that we're talking about so that you do know what we're talking about. If you are listening to this audio only, then as I said, there's an article on the watermattters.life website where you can see these images that Tim has shared.
Yeah, for sure. We'll do our best to describe the images, but do check out the blog or the YouTube.
Yeah, and just before we move on, because there are these. Well, I think you said earlier on, just before we started recording, it has opened your eyes to how much we might be seeing on the internet that is now not real.
Yeah, it is weird in researching this, including some of the real ones. Yeah. I did find AI versions of the real ones that were just a bit off, that were a bit too perfect, or some again that don't exist. There's one YouTube video of medieval rainwater capture, and again we've done a podcast before about ancient rainwater harvesting, and there are so many fascinating real examples. But this AI one was just faked, just made up. Again, really odd use of someone's time to make this fake stuff, but also increasingly we're gonna have to wade through the fake stuff to get to the real stuff.
Yeah, and I think a helpful reminder. We should all be reminded of this. I think quite often, just not to be too naive and believe everything.
Don't believe the first thing you see.
No, and just question.
Although I feel like it used to be one of the filters was, why would they bother making a fake thing of this? But that filter's already gone. It seems that people can be bothered to make fake things of pretty much everything. So especially things like Instagram. There's lots more fake stuff was shared on Instagram when I was researching some of this stuff. Yeah. Because I think it's just, if you're quickly scanning, just going for likes. Yeah. I think that's what people are going for.
People are looking for your attention. For sure. Which doesn't and they're not always telling the truth. So keep a lookout for that. But let's get on to then some of these very real examples of some of the more different methods of rainwater harvesting out there. What have you found?
Yeah, well, without wanting to sound too much like Bullseye in one, we've got the Bosco Verticale, which are these amazing two apartment blocks in Milan in Italy that have been planted on the outside to produce essentially vertical forests. So these are apartment blocks. People live in these apartments, and these aren't just balconies with a few plants in them. It's not just a nice planting scheme. This is literally a vertical forest, which is what Bosco Verticale means. They're both 27-floor apartment blocks, so big. The exteriors are planted with over 700 mature trees. It was built 10 years ago. Just over 10 years ago, actually, 2014. So they were mature trees then. They're much bigger trees now. 5,000 shrubs, 15,000 climbing plants. Now, the buildings take up just 1,500 square metres of ground space, but provide the neighbourhood with the equivalent of 20,000 square metres of forest. So they're genuinely vertical forests in the middle of a city. They capture rainwater. They cool the buildings naturally. So I guess we could all picture how much cooler it is in tree shade. But if your apartment building is shaded by tree shade, it turns out it can reduce the heat in the height of the Italian summer. It gets hot in Milan. In the height of the Italian summer, it can reduce the internal temperature by 30 degrees.
That's crazy.
And it apparently eliminates the need for air conditioning in most of the building. Again, in Milan. So it's really cool. They capture the rainwater directly. If they need to, it's topped up by a solar-powered groundwater pump. But interestingly, so the studio, architect studio behind it, Borio Studio, have done quite a few similar ones worldwide now. And the latest in the Dutch city of Eindhoven, made up of 125 apartments, has 4 rainwater collection tanks housing 20,000 litres each. Now, I just did my sums, and by my calculation, that's 640 litres of rainwater harvested per apartment. That's a lot of your water needs are covered by that much.
Absolutely.
So really cool. And when you look at the images, it looks way cooler than the AI ones we just talked about.
It looks really, really very good. And the thought of that just being in a city, as certainly a big city like Milan. That is, if that's possible, you sort of naturally ask yourself the question of why is that not done more often? Because it looks great, doesn't it?
Yeah, it looks so good. I imagine.
I mean, I wouldn't want to maintain it, but presumably with their I mean, I don't know I know very little about trees and plants and all that sort of stuff, but presumably they have picked low maintenance options. One would assume.
I think they've picked low maintenance, but also it's integrated into the design of the building. The material structure of the building is designed to support the load bearing, the irrigation systems. So it was not we build an apartment block, then add lots of trees to the outside. It was in the design, integral to the whole thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd love to see more of it.
It really does.
And I'd love to go to Milan and see it. I still haven't actually,
it really
despite first writing about them 5 years ago. So.
When did you find this? You've seen this example when you were doing your book?
Actually, my first book, Clearing the Air, which was about air pollution. Okay. So also another big benefit of all those trees, all those plants, is air filtration. So you get natural filtration of the air. So a lot of Northern European cities have big air pollution problems. They're getting better. But yeah, if you live in one of those apartments behind all that tree and vegetation filtration, happy days.
Yeah, really like that. Good first example.
Yeah, okay. Well then, in 2, we jump to Germany. And this is an example of a collaboration with artists. So this is upcycled musical instruments on the outside of a building. Now, this is going to be a harder one to explain for people that are not watching or reading. Essentially, it's an artist's series of courtyards in Dresden, Germany. The courtyards are called Kunststoffpassage. And one building in the courtyard of Elements is basically covered with what look like, instead of your normal downpipes, you've got lots of bendy, windy musical instruments or tapes on musical instruments, large funnels, large trumpets leading into downpipes that apparently when it's heavy rain can play a type of music, but I have checked out some YouTubes of this. I haven't heard. It's quite hard to make out. So maybe you have to be there to hear it in person.
I did enjoy your line about that, about the fact that it's supposed to, but I've listened to the YouTube videos and it really doesn't. And you've got to get through nearly a minute with the person talking over it before you can even have a chance of hearing it.
Yeah, but it looks very cool, and it is quite a cool idea of how artists can collaborate on rainwater capture and come up with something that looks really good and potentially sounds good. We don't know.
Absolutely. And also it does, I mean, in essence, they've made a downpipe just much more interesting, haven't they?
Well, that's
still
true.
Doing the same job because, well, I mean, they have then introduced the funnels and sort of open flows from section to section, which wouldn't be necessary. You know, you could just still have a closed downpipe that does make the building look more interesting and still sends the rainwater to where they want it to go.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a really good point. It's hard to make downpipes and gutters look good and be interesting, and in this case be an actual tourist attraction. I can't think of any other downpipes and gutters that are tourist attraction.
No,
so they managed it in Dresden.
No, and it does look good, and yeah, it would be very interesting, and maybe we'll ask some of our German colleagues from our parent company at Graf if any of them have actually visited there to find out if it does make a good sound when it's raining.
It does make sweet music. We will write in. Let us know if you've ever been to the Kunststoffpassage in Dresden and have heard the music in the rain.
You're also doing very well. When I read through this article, I did think, I'm so glad I'm not the person that's going to have to read these words out, because I don't think I was going to pronounce them anywhere near like you have.
Well, I've got no idea if that was correct. Sounded good.
Absolutely. So let's move to example number 3.
Yeah, and I should say example number 3 because I'm not rating these in order. They were just in the order they came. Mm-hmm. We might get onto favourites at the end. I don't know. But so in 3, I've got an inverted roof in Spain. So some Spanish architects, Herreros, have designed. I mean, we can all picture the roof of a house that's basically kind of a pitched roof, triangle going upwards. They have designed a house with the triangle inverted, and the triangle of the roof going downwards. And what this does, obviously, would be create the perfect rainwater capture situation. You've turned the roof of your house into essentially a funnel that is channeling all that water down one central channel and into a cistern. It's a fairly modest-sized house. It's actually a renovated shepherd's hut in quite a dry rural region of Spain. So I don't know if it's fully off-grid, this house. It might be. But essentially it was vital for the architects to make the most of any kind of natural capture they could get, and water being one of them. It's called the Pebo Cobo house. And it's the first example I've seen of an inverted roof designed purely for the rainwater capture benefits of it.
Yeah, which when you see it, and certainly read what you've written about it, it makes a lot of sense. Presumably it's sort of not the way it's been done, because if you think about the design of a roof, everything is designed to send the water away from the property itself, isn't it, really? So it does look like you are really asking for trouble almost. You're increasing the risk because you're sending all the water to directly over the living area, and so you've really got to trust that the roof has been made watertight correctly and sufficiently in order for it to work. But then we would kind of hope that with all roofs anyway.
Yeah, you'd hope it with all roofs anyway, but it's a really good point. And I guess as well as inverting the roof itself, it's also inverting a little bit the way we think about water.
Yeah.
Because for years, yes, we wanted the water to run off quickly, go down the drain pipe, musical or not, and then disappear down the drain, down the gutter. But increasingly, we need to hold on to that water, especially if you're in a dry part of rural Spain, but also, around the world. I can't see this catching on in houses here, but you could easily do it for, say, a garden office, or like smaller, or garages, or somewhere like that, kind of smaller freestanding. Because this is essentially a rectangular block of a building. There's nothing fancy about it except the roof. But if they had a pitched roof, there'd be a lot more exit points for that rainwater. It's a bit more complex to capture it. This is basically said, if you really want to capture rainwater, this is the design for you.
And also, I think so many of us are used to having, the typical roof as described, and as we're all, I don't know, are we taught it, or do we just naturally draw houses that way when we're about 3 or 4 years old? That's just the way you draw it, isn't it? A big triangle on the top, and then 4 windows and a door. But most of the time, that space in the middle that is the loft or the attic or whatever you want to call it is just full of rubbish, isn't it? Like we don't generally in the main put it to good use.
It's just storage space.
It's just storage, and it's just sort of it generally just gets added to as a collection area for things that we later regret. And so this really just actually, it means that space isn't there. They've probably made, it looks certainly from the picture as though they have used the 2 sides to bring more light into the building. And then, of course, what would have been the loft is actually now the collection area for all that rain, which does just, when you look at it like that, it makes so much more sense. But it is all about, that difference of, okay, get off my property, rainwater, we don't want you here, to change that to the exact opposite of, actually, you're really valuable and helpful. Let's collect it and keep it on. Make use of it.
Shifting it to, if it rains, we want to hold on to that water. Yeah, for sure.
And that was Spain. Okay, this is interesting. So we've gone Italy, Germany, Spain in terms of 3 good examples of how to do it well.
And now we're going to go to Hawaii. Somewhere I've never been. I'd like to go to Hawaii.
No, me neither.
But I did work on a project with another writer a couple of years ago that introduced me to Hawaii as the rainwater capital almost of the world in terms of the density of people that use rainwater. So the majority of people in the Big Island use rainwater for most of their water needs. I think it's something to do with the groundwater there. There's not so much groundwater to tap into, and there's more of a tradition and a culture of capturing rainwater. And in more recent times, they've gone for it in a big way. So the example I've given is swimming pools being used for rainwater capture. Now, isn't the swimming pools in the kind of the inverted into the ground painted blue swimming pools. It's more freestanding, circular, often plastic or metal, those types of swimming pools. So you can literally buy them from hardware stores in Hawaii, and they're large. So filling those with rainwater is going to give you most of your rainwater needs, and indeed does in large parts of Hawaii. And I found, so I've included a YouTube, which isn't Hawaii, it's actually mainland US, but it shows kind of how these systems work. And yeah, it's maximizing the concept of a water butt and putting it into swimming pool size. I believe some people actually use it for swimming pools. You can also fill your swimming pool with rainwater and swim in it. But typically what we're talking about here is using a freestanding large swimming pool and filling that with rainwater for your water needs.
Yeah, to then use for whatever you.
Yeah, and again in Hawaii, it's not uncommon at all to use it for drinking water, to use it for bathing water.
Okay.
Disclaimer from us: we don't recommend that.
Yeah.
You'd need a really good filtration system to use it, especially for drinking.
Yeah,
but it's not uncommon around the world.
Yeah.
It is worth knowing that actually. That we're quite squeamish about the idea, and you could say rightly so. Certainly, if you've not got your filtration and cleanliness of the tank sorted, then you are likely to get some health issues from that. But if you do have those two things sorted, and plenty of cultures and places in the world are used to doing that, you can absolutely, and people do use it for drinking water.
And do you know, maybe from the research of your book or something, do you know in Hawaii specifically what's the driver for that? Is it that they just don't actually have sort of the mains drinking water?
Yeah, it's lack of municipal infrastructure, lack of mains water, but as I say, also lack of groundwater. So lots of parts of the world might not have the municipal water, but you dig a well.
Yeah.
But I think in a lot of Hawaii, I guess maybe it's something to do with the volcanic relative newness of the islands, but they don't have the aquifers beneath that lots of other places do. So you don't have well water. If you don't have well water, you look to rainwater.
You've really got to collect what's falling on.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And then after Hawaii, we bounced back to Germany, because we're kind of building up in scale a bit now. So Potsdamer Platz in Berlin is famous for having, I say famous in water circles. I don't think you'd notice it if you went there.
I was going to say, I have actually been there, and I didn't know this. No, what you're about to say is news to me.
It's famous for having buried cisterns under the ground that collect the water that falls on Potsdamer Platz. Okay. There used to be some local flooding issues in the area. And as we're seeing kind of worldwide, including the UK, we are seeing more localised flooding, especially in urban areas where it's got nowhere to drain off. So Potsdamer Platz, actually back in the 90s, so this is a real kind of pioneer of buried cisterns. In 1998, it installed 5 underground rainwater cisterns with a total volume of 2,600 cubic metres, 900 of which is reserved for extreme rainfall, so kind of backup for extreme rain events. All the office buildings around it feed into the cisterns. 60% of the roof coverage is actually green roofs, so green vegetation. Again, you wouldn't necessarily immediately notice that in Potsdamer Platz because these are quite tall buildings. But you're looking from above, you'd see more green roofs. And that kind of helps to slow rainwater, filter it as well before it reaches these underground storage tanks. And then it's used to an extent in toilets in the buildings for irrigation. There's a pond and water feature. And the whole combined area is about 1.2 hectares. It's about 2 football pitches. So that's a decent coverage.
Yeah, a huge collection area. Isn't
it? And I was going to ask you actually, Matt. So 2,600 cubic meters. How big is that?
Yeah,
so you obviously deal with
underground.
Tanks.
We've done some of our geocellular. So the coffee table or that we have a glass of water on here. These stormwater crates are what we would use to form such a large tank.
Right. So would these stack on top of each other?
They form the void. Yeah. So they stack on top of each other, clip in next to each other, to create a load-bearing void underground, which is completely wrapped in a geomembrane, just like a pond liner. So a geomembrane material that is completely heat welded to make it watertight, and then you have inlets, pipe inlets going in to send the rainwater into those tanks, and then an outlet or several outlets out, which is normally restricted with the flow control in the way that we do it over here. And these, the benefit of these are they are sort of structurally load bearing. So with a meter plus of earth above it, you can then have a road above, a car park, a service yard.
Really?
So
yeah,
you can drive. I mean, they do come in different load capabilities, but these ones you could have a road above across. Yeah,
wow.
Absolutely. And they are 95 to 97% void. So they are, although yes, there's they're obviously made of recycled plastic. They are they're mostly just an empty space for water to fill.
And looking at this single one, is that about half a cubic meter?
Each one individually is around about between 300 and 350 litres. It would hold.
Yeah.
So and then they can stack up. Blimey, we've done some tanks that are sort of 7-8 layers deep, and so 2,600 cubic meters. That's a very large version of those tanks. Certainly here in the UK, the biggest we've done is I think the actual largest we've done is 6,000 something, but that's very, very rare.
Yeah.
So that is a lot of water storage, and the thing is that's back in 1998. I know Germany was always ahead of us. Sort of, that's why we got involved with Graph back in 2007. We looked to Germany because they were ahead of the UK in terms of rainwater harvesting and stormwater management anyway. But that's a long time ago for them to be installing a system like that.
Yeah.
Especially rainwater harvesting at that scale is it's what makes sense on any sort of development because it's perfectly possible to design it that way. I think the drawing or the schematic kind of image that's in your article shows it perfectly. Why not collect that rainwater and then reuse it? Because all of those buildings are going to have toilets in that need flushing and whatever else that could and can be harvested rainwater rather than mains water. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it does, and especially the flood mitigation side of it as well. I've come across similar designs in India and Pakistan where you get extreme rainfall in monsoons anyway, but it's getting more and more extreme with climate change. And yes, some inner city squares and parks, actually quite a few parks have put this under because relatively easy to dig up a park. Put you in terms of if you're doing retrofit, relatively easy to dig up a park than it is to move some buildings. So there's quite a few parks in Australia do this as well.
Yeah. Well, and also the reason that I don't know how these tanks were constructed and what type they are, but the reason that we use these blocks for the big tanks like that is our one-piece kind of cylindrical tanks that you might picture if you're thinking of an underground rainwater collection tank. The largest that we install over here in the UK is 52,000 litres because that fills really with no space around it a full articulated lorry. So the full length of an Arctic lorry, the full width and height, it's 2.5 meters diameter. It's a cylinder, but it is the full length 13.6 meters of an Arctic lorry, and that holds 52,000 litres of water.
And just to convert back to cubic meters,
so 52
cubic meters.
So that's 52 cubic meters.
That's 52, so the whole of a lorry.
Yeah.
And we just talked about 2,600
exactly
below Potsdamer Platz.
Yeah. So
cool.
It's enormous.
Yeah.
That's perhaps a helpful way of trying to get an idea of how much water we're talking about here.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's scale up even more for our next example, which is in the Sahel region of Africa, and these are the Sahel moon ponds. Now, you may have seen images of this online. The Sahel is an extremely arid region in Central Africa. It kind of crosses across most of the continent. Desertification has been increasing over recent years. You've got drought, overgrazing, climate change, obviously, deforestation. But there was a traditional way of capturing rainwater in the region that had kind of fallen by the wayside, or at least wasn't used as much, which is called half-moon ponds or zai pits. And it's being revived. So essentially you use hand tools, you dig about 30 to 50 centimetres down into a semicircle or half-moon shape, which is where they get their name, about 4 metres across. You're doing this essentially kind of in the desert or in very dry scrubland. The remarkable thing is that this forms a natural rainwater capture, so that when it does rain, the few times it does rain, the water stays within these ponds. So again, it's kind of synonymous with Potsdamer Platz. If your rainwater is just hitting tarmac and spreading out, you lose that water. If you've got something to capture it, you keep it. Now, when you start to dig quite a few of these half-moon ponds next to each other, you start to regreen that part of the desert. Now, remarkably, so in Niger, the World Food Programme has been doing this since about 2014, and in just the first 5 years, they restored about 3,000 acres of land. They started doing this in Kenya around the same time with the Maasai community, and again about 3,000 hectares of land. That's the equivalent of 6,000 football pitches, so that's slightly bigger than the 2 football pitches of Potsdamer Platz. And to make it even bigger still, this is now a central part of Africa's Great Green Wall Initiative, which began in 2007, and it's essentially trying to create what it sounds like, a green wall of vegetation across the whole of the Sahel, across the African continent. And half-moon ponds are a key part of doing that. They're not bringing any water in. They're not trucking water in to add to these ponds. They're purely capturing rainwater, and at scale that starts to regreen the whole area.
Meaning there is vegetation for them to then make food from.
Yeah, so some of this is combined with farming. So you can plant some drought-resistant crops such as sorghum, wheat, and millet. So you start to create farmable land. But also just simply the fact bringing green vegetation back and stopping desertification just makes it a much more climate resilient area, a much more habitable area. You can also start to farm livestock more. So it's a really incredible thing. It's one of the most positive, I think, just conservation and humanitarian stories.
Again, it's hard to, sort of hard to picture. Well, I think most people can picture one football pitch, especially at the moment with the World Cup on. Lots of people will be looking at football pitches a lot. As when this, this is going to go out in a few weeks' time, but it started now, and I'm sure it'll still be going on.
Picture
6,000 of them, exactly. I mean, that's enormous. It's and also just interesting about sort of the different uses of rainwater. Most of the other examples, and certainly our day-to-day examples that we work with in our business, is just to use rainwater instead of using valuable and drinkable mains water for flushing toilets and garden irrigation and all that sort of stuff. This has got absolutely nothing to do with toilets, but it's just being put to good use for really even better reasons, even more significant reasons.
But it's also all part of the same story. It's using rainwater capture to capture rainwater where it falls and making use of it. And it's essentially the same story for all of these examples. So we talk about water scarcity a lot, and in a UK context we talk about the plight of the water companies a lot, and we will come back to that, I'm sure, in different episodes. But there is still rainwater. There's always rainwater, except in the very, very driest parts of the world. And the Sahel, parts of the Sahel, is the driest part of the world. It's on that list anyway. So capturing that rainwater when it falls is so precious and so important in all of these global contexts for different reasons.
Absolutely.
And it's fascinating to see this kind of traditional technique being revived and used at scale.
It's such a simple technique as well.
And then the next one, we're jumping around a little bit, but we're now going to Singapore. So one thing those AI slop images did get right is that Singapore is a pioneer for rainwater capture. So Singapore is a water scarce country, though it has a lot of rainfall.
Right.
So again, maybe a little bit like Hawaii. It's in a tropical region, gets a lot of rainfall, but it doesn't have much groundwater. Singapore's pretty small. It's very densely populated. So they're pioneering in a lot of ways with water. So they do a lot of desalination. They created a form of water recycling, which is called pure water, which can literally recycle sewage water to drinking quality standard.
Okay, well.
That produces about a quarter of Singapore's drinking water, amazingly. So a lot of the tap water, you can buy it bottled.
Right.
But the other part of this is rainwater capture. So they've all been big on rainwater capture for decades. Now, the one in the article, the image that may well be popping up on your screen as I speak, is of Kutek Put Hospital in Singapore. This is kind of similar to the Bosco Verticale in Milan, but as well as on the outside, it's also on the inside. It's, again, a vertical forest concept. And rainwater falls on it and then is channeled into a kind of a stream that runs through the whole hospital. There's also part of the concept is the patient health, patient care and well-being. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of good research on proximity to vegetation and water being really good for health and well-being, but also for recuperating from, ailments and so on. So there's a real patient care aspect to this. I found an article on Kutek Put Hospital by Living Future, which describes greenery extended from the central courtyard to upper levels of the building and down into the open-to-sky basement, creating the impression of architecture deeply enmeshed in a garden. And the total surface area of horizontal greenery is almost 4 times the size of the land that the hospital stands on. There's even a rainwater-fed waterfall that runs between 2 levels of the hospital, which must be so cool to see. And the whole building is designed with aluminium fins on the walls, on the external walls, which channels the wind and rain, capturing rainwater and cooling the building, which apparently reduces aircon use. Which, if you've ever been to Singapore, is pretty vital. You do need aircon, but it reduces the need for that by half, by 50%. So that's a huge energy saving, as well as everything else. And it looks good, like the Milan example. It looks really good, and as I say, Singapore, you'll see a number of buildings draped in greenery. The need for greenery, the concept of this biophilic design that I mentioned earlier, is really big in Singapore. Mm-hmm. And then whilst we are sticking with kind of large catchments, so we're going back to the UK now for permeable paving. I hoped you were going to get one UK example. We're very disappointing otherwise. Well, we're going to the glamorous city of Hull for permeable paving. Now, there are lots of permeable paving examples that I could have come up with. I particularly like this one because it's just a normal street, looks quite a lot like the street I live in, to be honest. Terraced houses, tarmac roads parked along the side. But back in, I think it was 2023, they ripped up the tarmac of the road and replaced it with permeable paving. Now, there's lots of different permeable paving designs, and before I keep saying permeable paving, I should explain what I mean. Essentially, when water hits tarmac, we can all picture it just goes to the side of the road, channels, goes down the drain. As climate change is increasing our extreme rainfall events, again, a concept we've talked about quite a few times on the podcast, you need to be allowing that water somewhere else to go. You need the water to be able to drain down as well as sideways. So instead of hard tarmac, you need to use something permeable that allows the water through to an extent. So it's not just open ground. Mm-hmm. You still need a road surface to be able to drive on. But in this situation in Hull, in a street called Rosmead Street, they replaced it with interlocking red bricks, essentially. They're purpose-built, not just the standard bricks of a house, because they're slightly... they're made to interlock in a way that leaves a bit of a gap. So it's done in a, would you call that kind of a herringbone style, I guess you would, across the road. And essentially gives somewhere for the stormwater to seep through. So that will help top up the aquifers below. It holds on to some of that water for times of drought. Also gives the flood water somewhere to go. So we're not just overwhelming our drains and overwhelming our sewage works, which is a huge problem in this country. And I think also here, the properties on the street, the terraced housing, was also all given new guttering and relaid pavements to kind of work as one. So the whole street is now kind of a rainwater capture street. It's still a very normal residential street.
But also looks better from the pictures.
Yeah, it does look better. I think it looks good. I think it's a good look. There's lots of other permeable paving designs. I've seen kind of permeable concrete. Have you come across any in your work, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. We've done some on some schemes. They have the same geomembrane liner that I talked about. These stormwater crates are wrapped in. They form that underneath the permeable paving sometimes to create a bit of a tank underneath, and then channel that sometimes into larger underground tanks. Certainly if they want to reuse that water.
What sort of designs have you seen for the paving itself?
Varieties of the same as this picture here, really. Just lots of different sort of types and colours and sort of. We see them a lot in large car parks of retail parks. That
right.
Sort of stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
Because they used to be. I'm not sure they're as used now as they were about sort of 8 or 10 years ago. But it's still quite a common way of doing it, I think.
Yeah. And there's cities around the world are really going for this now and realising that they have to. So the spun city concept of making sure that the water has somewhere to go is held on to, is retained. Floods are reduced in speed and volume. This all comes down to making these surfaces more permeable. So one to watch, and I was quite pleased to find an example. In Hull,
a UK example.
Yeah,
exactly.
And then finally, I wanted to kind of give a nod to just the most basic ways of capturing rainwater manageable. And this was partly inspired by my own experiences of when I moved into my own house before I'd fixed any water butts. I was just starting to write the water book. The last drop, and I was becoming more aware of the need to capture rainwater, but I didn't have any way to do it. So I think I had one of those wipeable tablecloths that you have if you got small kids, and we had one that was a bit old, so I'd kind of pinned that to various garden chairs and created a bit of a funnel situation into some buckets. And but that's the most basic way of doing it. As long as you've got some kind of plastic sheet that you can form into a funnel and some way of pinning it high, then you've got a rainwater capture situation. So I just put a couple of examples, one from Facebook of it's typically kind of pinning out a tarp. So if you've got a tarp or any kind of plastic sheet, then I've got an example from Australia. I've got an example from Tier Fund, from Sudan. Amazing, I even found an idea that's been commercialised called rain sources, which is hilarious. I hope we can get a picture of this up on the video. Essentially, it's kind of like the cone of shame that you put around the vet puts around a dog to stop them gnawing at their wound. But stick that on top of a barrel or water butt, and you've got a bit more water capture than just if the rain's just falling. So anything that slightly extends your surface area, you can capture some rainwater. So I wanted to give a nod to that there are lots of weird and wonderful DIY ways of capturing rainwater.
Which would be very relevant for anyone that, there's lots of people that have allotment patches, aren't there?
Yeah.
And of course, some of them have little sheds and stuff that do then have a small bit of guttering and a water butt connected to them. But if you are just in an open allotment with no buildings, no roof areas, then using these as examples, you can create your own way of capturing more than you would just if you left a few buckets around.
There's always a way. So you might not have a roof, you might not have a garden, but there is always a way of capturing some rainwater and making use of it.
And as we've talked about many times, and I'm not going to go there because we said this is going to be an upbeat and optimistic episode.
Let's stay with that.
I'm not going to end on why you might want to start doing that, but we will just look to these examples and perhaps just invite you all, if you have come up with any of your own similar or in fact different ways of collecting rainwater that you then managed to put to good use, please do let us know. There is now the ability to comment on all of the articles that we share on the watermattters.life website, so it would be very easy if you're subscribed to the fortnightly email newsletter that gets sent on Water Wednesdays. All you need to do is go onto watermattters.life, put your email in, hit submit, and you'll then be subscribed to that, and that means you can then log in to when you read the articles, you can then leave a comment, and if you have any good examples of either stuff that you're doing or people that you know are doing, please don't be shy. Do share it with us, because we might then revisit that on a future episode of the podcast. But hopefully there's some inspiration there for anyone listening to get involved yourself and make the most of collecting rainwater, because it really is easy to do in many ways, and very, very helpful.
Yeah, I'd absolutely love some listener feedback on this one. So if you've ever done any DIY rigs yourself to capture rainwater, somewhere on your travels that you've seen crazy ways it's done, have you swum in a Hawaiian rainwater-fed swimming pool? We want to hear from you. That'd be great.
Absolutely, yeah. Do let us know. Okay, thank you very much, Tim.
My pleasure.
Another very interesting episode, and looking forward to what's coming up in the future. Thank you once again if you've listened. If you are a listener and a regular listener, please do subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us on the whatever podcast platform you listen to us on. Tell everyone you know about it. We're trying to create more awareness and get more attention on all of these water matters. And so we will be back with episode 32 coming up in 2 weeks' time. But for now, thanks very much, and we will be back with you soon.
Thank you.
Cheers, Tim.